Hello and welcome to Cloud and Proud Azure Technical Series with me, Daniel Baker. Now, Cloud and Proud is a series of workshop sessions designed to help you understand Azure and prepare you for certification success. It's designed around a series of business case studies that focus on key aspects of using the Microsoft Cloud. We will work together and together we will build business solutions using a variety of tools. If you have any questions or feedback during the sessions, please feel free to reach out to me because I'm always happy to hear from you. In our first session, we look at a company called Contoso. Now, Contoso is a small born in the cloud manufacturing company that wishes to build its computing platform in Azure. They also wish to partner with Northwind Traders and establish a connection between the two companies that would allow data to be securely shared. In this exercise, we will design the VNet configurations of both companies and explore the different options available to meet the stated objectives. We will use both PowerShell and GUI tools to create the networks and then create security templates for authentication. There are some prerequisites to the session. Firstly, we're going to need access to an Azure subscription for both companies. Now, if need be, you can sign up for a free trial at azure.microsoft.com. Secondly, we're going to require the following files: 3 PowerShell scripts and makecert.exe that we're going to use for certificate creation later in the session. All of these files are available to download from the Cloud and Proud website. So before we jump into building our Azure solution, let's take a few moments to familiarize ourselves with our environment and the Azure portal. Okay, so let's jump straight into our desktop. And the first thing I want to look at are these 2 subscriptions that I've created. So I've created a new subscription for Northwind Traders, and I've created a second subscription for Contoso. Now, it's important to note that these are brand new subscriptions. The only thing that I've done is I've renamed the default dashboard so we can differentiate between the 2 companies. As a little tip, if you want to run these side by side, then run them in an in-private session because it means the cookies won't affect each other. So let's minimize this and go into my Explorer. Now in here, I've copied makecert.exe and I've pasted this into C, Windows, System 32. And if you cast your minds back, I said that I need this file to help generate the self-signed certificates that are present in the scripts. Finally, I've opened up PowerShell.ise. Now, it's important to remember that we run this as an administrator because of some of the installation requirements of the script. From there, I've imported the 3 files: Contoso VPN, Contoso VM, and Northwind.ps1. Okay, so at this point, and for the sake of time, I'm going to assume that you are familiar with the portal layout. Now, don't worry, I will be working with you through everything we do, but I would hope that you are familiar with the basics of navigation. What we are going to do is begin building our environment, or discussing the script that's going to build the environment for us. Now, a big ask on the Azure certification track is a general understanding of PowerShell. So what I would like to do where possible is demonstrate our solutions using both scripting and the GUI portals to make sure that you get to see the benefits of both. For this section, our script will accomplish 3 things: configure the Contoso HQ virtual network, create the VNet gateway, and build the VPN tunnel with certificate authentication. So before we jump in, let's understand the key components of our solution. Now, predominantly what we're going to be building is a virtual network. An Azure Virtual Network, or a VNet, is a representation of your own network in the cloud. You can control network settings and define DHCP address blocks, DNS settings, security policies, and routing. You can also further segment your VNet into subnets and deploy Azure Infrastructure as a Service virtual machines and Platform as a Service role instances in the same way that you can deploy physical and virtual machines in your on-premises data center. In essence, you can expand your network to Azure, bringing your own IP address blocks with you. An Azure VNet gateway can be used to send network traffic between virtual networks and on-premises locations, or between multiple virtual networks hosted within Azure. The following cross-premises connections are supported: we start off with site to site. Now, site to site is a VPN connection over IPsec utilizing the Internet Key Exchange version 1 or version 2 technologies. This type of connection will require a VPN device or a routed and remote access server to be present on premises. Next, we have a point-to-site connection. Now, a point-to-site connection is a VPN connection over secure socket tunneling protocols, which doesn't require a VPN routing device to be present on premises. This is typical of traveling laptops or home working, where there are a small amount of devices that need to connect into the Azure network. Next, we have VNet to VNet. This type of connection is the same as site to site, but configured within the Azure realm. Next, we have multi-site. Multi-site is a variation of site to site that allows you to connect multiple on-premises sites to a virtual network. And finally, we have ExpressRoute, which is a direct connection to Azure from your WAN using MPLS technology. Now, ExpressRoute connections offer more reliability, faster speeds, lower latencies, and higher security than typical connections over the internet. In this session, we will explore point-to-site, site-to-site, and VNet to VNet configurations. Okay, so the first part of our solution focuses on point-to-site VPN connectivity. Now, a point-to-site configuration allows you to create a secure connection to your virtual network from a client computer. It's established by starting a connection from the client itself. Point-to-site is an excellent solution when you want to connect to your VNet from a remote location, such as from home or a conference, or when you only have a few clients that need to connect to a virtual network. Point-to-site connections are authenticated using PKI certificates. As mentioned in the previous slide, certificates are used to authenticate VPN clients for point-to-site VPN connectivity. Now we have two choices here. We can use certificates generated by an enterprise certification authority, or we can choose to generate our own self-signed certificate solution. It's important to note that we can upload up to 20 root certificates into Azure, but perhaps more importantly is understand that we must have a root certificate and a client certificate that has been created from the root, installed in our personal certificate store on our local machines before we're able to authenticate into the Azure network. Now this will happen automatically in this session using the PowerShell scripts provided. Okay, so thank you for holding on and staying with me. I promise these sessions will not be death by PowerPoint, so let's jump in and start building our solution. Okay, so let's jump back into our desktop and go into PowerShell ISE. So let's just make this font a little bigger so it's easier to see. Again, need to remind you that this needs to run as an administrator for some of the things that it's going to be doing. But we can see that this script will create an Azure Resource Manager virtual network named Contoso VNet with two subnets. One subnet is going to be called Production to host the virtual machines. The second subnet is the Contoso gateway, which is going to be used as an endpoint for incoming connections. The gateway will have a public interface and will also host a VPN client address pool for our point-to-site connections. Now, what's really important is that before running this script, we copy the makes.exe file into the C Windows System 32 folder. If you haven't done so, I encourage you to do that now. Okay, so let's scroll down and take a look at what this script does. So the first thing that this script is going to do is install PowerShell, the latest ARM module updates, and then change focus and authenticate into the account. From there, it's going to go ahead and set the variable. So you can see it's going to create a VNet name called Contoso VNet on a subnet called Production, a gateway subnet called Gateway Subnet, and then we've got our VNet prefix. So we're going to put this on the 192.168.10.0/24 network. Okay, from there we're going to create a /25 prefix for our production subnet, and we're going to create a gateway prefix for our gateway subnet. From there, we're also creating a VPN client address pool. We're going to place everything into a resource group called Contoso, and we're going to host that under Central US. The gateway name is going to be Contoso Headquarters Gateway with an IP name of CHQ GWIP. Okay. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and create a certificate that's going to be used for authentication. Okay, so we're happy with this. So let's scroll down. The first thing we're going to do then is create the resource group. So we're going to use the command new Azure RM resource group. The name is going to take it from the variable. So it's going to be Contoso HQ and the location is going to be Central US. From there, we'll create our subnets. We're going to create a production subnet and a gateway subnet. Once done, we will create the virtual network based on the subnets and add the public IP address to the gateway subnet. From there, we will create the virtual network gateway. And if you were running this, one section at a time, this is the part that's going to take its time. What's happening here is it's going to build a virtual machine. It's going to install a Windows operating system on there, routing and remote access. It's going to configure all of the IP address assignments and all of the routes. So I would imagine that this section here will take between 30 and 60 minutes. Now, once that's done, what we're going to do is create the root and client PKI certificates for the point-to-site authentication. And again, I must stress that you must make sure that you copy make cert to this location or it will fail. So what we'll do is we're going to change the directory to Cloud and Proud version 2 delivery files. We are going to then run make cert to create the root certificate, encrypted using the secure hash algorithm at 256 and a length of 2048. Okay, and it's going to be called Contoso HQ root.cert. From there, we're going to create a client certificate derived from it. Now, I'm sure someone out there can do this much better than me, but I have found an issue when extracting the certificates that it doesn't extract it in the correct format. So once I've taken that certificate, all I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat and run certutil to encode the original exported one into a new certificate that I can then aggregate and upload into Azure. Okay, so it's going to take that new certificate and it's going to import it and upload it into the Azure Virtual Gateway. Finally, when that's done, what it will do is it will create a download URL for the Windows VPN client. And what we'll do is we'll copy and paste the code that appears down here into a browser window and it will invite us to download our client. So let's go ahead and run this script. So to do this, let's just move this up a little bit so we can see what's going on. All I'm going to do is I'm going to come up and I'm going to hit the play button, run script. Okay, so from there, the script you're about to run will be saved. Okay, we can see that the script begins to run. Now, it's going to take a little while because it's now going to download all of the latest module update files. And then what it will do is it will invite me to authenticate into my Azure subscription. So what I'll do is I'm going to pause the video, and this could take anywhere up to 20 minutes. But once that's done, we'll come back and we'll proceed with authentication. And we're back. So hopefully that didn't take you guys too long. We can see it's now asking me to sign into my account. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in as Contoso dem at outlook.com. And we'll just enter the password for this. And then from there, sign in. Okay, so all being well, what will now happen is this script will look at my subscription. It will create the resource group, create all of my subnets and VNets, create that gateway, which is going to take some time, and then configure and build all of my certificates. So again, I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to leave it for half an hour. And when I come back, we should be good to go. And we're back, and we can see that the script has run, and what's happened is it's now given me a URL to download my certificate. So if I just grab this here and we're going to go ahead and copy, let's go into our Explorer window. And then from here, if I paste in that URL, if I paste in that URL and hit enter, then what's going to happen is it's going to ask us, do we want to run a save? I'm going to say run. We're going to say that Windows protected our PC. Now, I was expecting that because it's an executable that we're trying to download. So I'm going to go more info and I'm going to choose to run this anyway. And then we can see we've got user account control. And do we wish to install a VPN client for Contoso VNet? Now, if you wonder why my mouse keeps moving over, it's because I'm running a dual monitor setup and the prompts are appearing on my primary monitor. Do I wish to install a VPN client for Contoso VNet? I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I'm actually going to cancel out of this because I've already got one installed. But if you go ahead and say yes, then what you will find is once you go into your network, you should see that you now have a Contoso VNet in there. And if we go ahead and connect into the Windows Azure Virtual Network, you should see that the certificates authenticate. And what we can then do is if we go into a command prompt, let's just drag that over. And if we do an IP config, we should see that we now have a Contoso VNet point-to-point connection on that 192.168.20 network. So that's now gone across and we're connected into our network. So let's come down and pull that down. Let's go into the Contoso dashboard. And what we want to do is we want to have a look at the effects of that script. So just to clean things up, I'm just going to remove everything that's in that dashboard. And then what I'm going to do is on my keyboard, I'm going to hold down G and R to bring up my resource groups. Okay, so the keyboard shortcut, I'm holding down G and pressing R to bring up my resource groups. Now in there, you can see I've got Contoso HQ. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to pin that to dashboard. And we can see that that is now pinned into my dashboard. From there, I'm going to go ahead and customize, and I'm going to make that slightly smaller at 2 tiles by 1 tile. If I go into Contoso HQ, you can see in there I have my Contoso VNet, my Contoso headquarters gateway VNet, and my Contoso headquarters gateway IP address. So again, I'm just going to right click and I'm going to pin all of these into the dashboard so we're aware of what that script's created. Let's just try that one more time. Pin to dashboard. Pin to dashboard. And pin to dashboard. Okay, cool. So let's just go ahead and like before, we'll make these 2 by 1s. 2 by 1. And we'll make that 2 by 1. Okay. The script has worked, our dashboard is updated, and we're good to go with moving on to the next part of the session. Okay, so we've seen that the first part of the session has worked. We've updated our dashboard. Now what I want to do though is I want to try and recreate this by creating a branch office and a second gateway and then creating a VNet to VNet VPN configuration between headquarters and the branch office. Now the reason I'm doing this is so we can deploy using the Resource Manager portal. We've seen how we do it using the script. Now let's use the graphical portal to achieve the same thing. This is going to be going through the same steps. I'm going to be creating a Contoso branch VNet. I'm just changing it from a 10 to 100, a production subnet, a gateway subnet, and then once that's done, we'll create that connection between the 2 gateways. So later on in the session, we can test connectivity between virtual machines. So back into our desktop, let's go into our Contoso subscription. Now, I think what I want to do to separate this is I'm going to go ahead and create a new dashboard. And I'm going to call this Contoso branch. And it's the same subscription. I've created these separate dashboards just so we can differentiate between the technologies. So I'm going to go ahead, and from here I'm going to click on resource groups. We can see I've got Contoso HQ in there, but I'm going to go ahead and create a new resource group, and I'm going to call this one Contoso branch. Okay, I'm going to use my Azure Pass, and I'm going to put this into, let's have a look, Central US. There we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll pin that to dashboard, and we'll just clean that up like before. So I'm going to customize, going to make that a 2x1, and done. Okay, so from there, the first thing that I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to create my virtual network. So I'm going to come in from here, and then within my resource group, I'm going to go ahead and click on add. And within my marketplace, I'm going to search for a virtual network. And we can see at the top, we've got virtual network. And it's going to change focus, and you can see we've got a virtual network gateway, a virtual network. This is the one that we want to select. So let's go ahead and say virtual network, and it says create a logically isolated section in Microsoft Azure with this networking service. You can securely connect it to your on-premises data center or on a single client machine or an IPsec connection. Virtual networks make it easy for you to take advantage of the scalable on-demand infrastructure of Azure while providing connectivity to data and applications on premises, including systems running Windows Server, mainframes, and Unix. We're going to go ahead and use Resource Manager. Now, if you're familiar with the older videos, we would have used a classic deployment model, but on this one, we're going to stick to Resource Manager. So do make sure that it says that in your deployment model dropdown. From there, let's say create. Okay, and I'm going to call this cbranch VNet. And we're going to put this on the address space 192, just move that mouse for you, .168.100.0/24. From there, we're going to create a subnet called production. And the production subnet is going to be in the 192.168.100.0/25. The subscription will be Azure Pass, the resource group will be Contoso branch, and the location will be Central US. So let's go ahead, we'll choose to pin that to dashboard, and we can go ahead and hit create. And there we go. We can see that that Contoso branch VNet has now been created. So from in this section, what we're going to do is we're now going to go ahead and build our second subnet. You can see that we've got no connected devices. We come down to our settings, we've got properties. We can see our address space, the 192.168.100.0/24. And we can see that we have our production subnet in there of 192.168.100.0/25. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a gateway subnet. So I click on the Gateway Subnet button. The name is already in there as Gateway Subnet, and it's already put a suggested address range in there. Okay, that's fine. I'm not going to bother with a route table, but you can see that I can go in there and I could add a resource in there if needed. So I'm going to come back, I'm going to leave it as is, accept the defaults, and just hit OK to generate that gateway subnet. So that should take less than 30 seconds. Just check. So you can see it's adding the subnet. That should wake up any moment now. And we can see that that's now populated in there. So this will report back as succeeded any second. Okay, so the gateway subnet is done. It said it's successful. Let's move on to the next part of the session. And then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to come into the Contoso branch. We've now got our branch VNet. From there, we're going to click Add. And we're going to look for a virtual network gateway. So let's come down to virtual network gateway. And we're going to select the virtual network gateway. And again, let's go ahead and hit create. Okay, and then from there it wants a name. So I'm going to call this C branch gateway. And make sure it's happy with that. We're going to choose our virtual network, which is going to be the Contoso branch. We're going to choose a new public IP address. So we can see that the Contoso headquarters one is there. We're going to go ahead and create a new public IP address, and we'll call that C branch gateway. We'll just accept the default, so that's fine. For the gateway type, I'm going to say that it's a VPN gateway as opposed to an express route. And for the VPN type, I'm going to use this as route based. The subscription, I'm going to leave as Azure Pass. It's in the right resource group and in the right location. So let's go ahead and choose to pin that to dashboard and then hit create. But do note, look, provisioning of a virtual network gateway may take up to 45 minutes. So what we'll do is we'll pause the video, we'll come back when that's done, and we'll carry on with the session. So while we wait for our gateway to create, let's just quickly establish the difference between root versus policy-based VPN. Now, policy-based VPNs were previously called static routing gateways in the classic deployment model. They encrypt and direct packets through IPsec tunnels based on the IPsec policies configured between your on-premises network and the Azure Virtual Network. Route-based VPNs were previously called dynamic routing gateways in the classic deployment model. Now, with a route-based VPN, we use routes in the routing table to direct packets to their corresponding tunnel interfaces. The tunnel interfaces then encrypt or decrypt the packets in and out of the tunnels. And we're back. We can see that the Contoso branch gateway is being created. And if we come back, we can now see that we now have our two networks in there. What are we missing? We are missing our public IP. So let's go into the resource group and let's pin that onto the dashboard. And we'll just quickly clean this up. So we'll make that a 2x1. We'll put it down there. And now we've got all of the components on the screen. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bridge these two connections. So I'm going to move back over to headquarters. And then from there, what I want to do is I want to go into the Contoso headquarters gateway. And from here, I'm going to come across to connections. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new connection in. So from here, I need to give it a name. So I'm bridging the connection. So I'm going to call this HQ- branch. Okay, we get a little tick in there. Oh, let's just move that back. And we want to do a VNet to VNet connection type. So my first virtual network gateway is going to be the Contoso headquarters gateway, and that's going to connect into the Contoso branch gateway. Now they're going to need a shared key between them. So I'm going to go ahead and populate this with, I don't know, let's put in capital M, I, CR0, S0, FT123 maybe. Oh. Okay, just type it right. So capital M1, CR0, S0, FT123 will be our shared key. It's in the Azure Pass. Contoso headquarters is the resource group in central US. I'm going to copy that shared key because I'm going to use that for the other direction. And we're going to go ahead and say OK. So that's now going to create the connection for me. It shouldn't take too long, so we'll give it a moment. And any second that should appear. Okay, we can see the connection has been successfully created. So that's now refreshed. Now what we're going to do is we're going to close that and we're going to go into Contoso branch and we're going to do one pointing back. So I'm going to go into my Contoso branch gateway. I'm going to come across to my connections. Now we should see that HQ branch has come across. We expect that to happen. We're now going to do one pointing back. So I'm going to say branch hyphen headquarters. It's going to be a VNet to VNet, the Contoso branch gateway, and we're going to point to the Contoso headquarters gateway. I'm going to paste in that shared key. The Azure path is fine, the resource group is fine, the location is fine. So again, we'll say OK to this. And then we'll give that a minute to update and we should see that these then connect because they now have all of the components they need to do so. Okay, let's just wait for this to do. We can see they successfully created the connection. This will appear in a moment. And it's there. And that will now update. So what we want to see is we want to see a status of connected between these. Okay, so let's jump back and make sure that it's just come into the headquarters. And if we come across to connections, we can see that branch and HQ to branch is there. So we'll just leave this for a few minutes and we'll wait for this to change status. Oh, actually, I've just seen out the corner of my eye that it's already changed status to succeeded. So we can now see that there is a connection between headquarters and the branch office. Okay, brilliant. So what we now have is we have our point-to-site connection going into Contoso headquarters. We have built Contoso branch office using the graphical portal. We have created a connection between the two gateways. So what I want to do now is I want to build a connection from Northwind. Now, Northwind at the moment is a blank canvas. It's a brand new subscription. It doesn't have a virtual network. It doesn't have a gateway, and there's nothing populated within it. And I'm going to invite you to make your own decisions on this. If you want to practice, then by all means, pause the video and go in and create this using the graphical portal using these settings. Okay, if you don't want to do it and want to follow through with me, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the PowerShell script northwind.ps1, and what that's going to do is it's going to build the virtual network, it's going to create that gateway for me, and it's going to build the virtual machine. So let's go take a look at that script, and then what we'll do is we'll run it and we'll come back in an hour or so. So back into my desktop, I'm going to come down into PowerShell and I'm going to move across to Northwind. So let's just clean this up so we can see it fresh. So this PowerShell script will create an Azure Resource Manager virtual network named Northwind VNet with 2 subnets and populate with a virtual machine running Windows Server 2012 R2 Data Center Northwind HQ01. It's going to be used for cross subnet connectivity in session 1 of Cloud and Proud. So just like before, we're going to go through, make sure we've got the latest updates. We're then going to authenticate into the Northwind account. We're going to set our variables. So again, very familiar to the last PowerShell that we run, where we set our VNet name, our gateway, our subnet addresses. But what changes is we're not setting up any point-to-site connectivity here. What we're going to do is once we have built the gateway, we're going to go ahead and create a storage account. Okay, now important to note that the storage account must be unique. So if you're in doubt, use the test Azure test-Azure storage proposed name to check to see if it's available. I've checked this morning and that's fine, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. So we'll go ahead and create a new Azure storage account. From there, we're going to specify what virtual network we want to connect into. We're going to create a network interface card, and then from there, we're going to build a virtual machine called Northwind HQ01. It's going to be a standard A3 machine, so 4 cores, 7 gig of RAM, and then from there, we'll specify our administrator account and password. We're going to specify that we want the latest version of Windows 2012 R2 data center. We'll specify our disk, and from there we'll go ahead and build that machine. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on play. I'm going to run the script, and we'll come back in an hour with Northwind Traders built. And we're back. We can see that the script has successfully run. So let's minimize this. And let's jump into Northwind Traders. Now, like before, let's just go ahead and clean this up. So we start with a blank canvas. And then what I'll do is I'll go into either my resource groups, or let's come down to all resources this time. And you'll see all of the things that are hosted inside my Northwind resource group. Okay, you'll notice that we've got some other things in here. We've got the virtual networks, we've got the gateway. But you can also see we've got some storage accounts. We've got a virtual machine in there. We've got a public interface for the virtual machine, and we've got a NIC in there too. So let's go ahead and into my resource group. Let's just pin that resource group onto the dashboard and customize it. And then from there, let's go ahead and start pinning these things onto our dashboard. So is this pinning? No, doesn't look like it is. Oh, no, there it is. So we'll pin the virtual machine. And let's pin the gateway IP and our gateways and our VNets. I'm not entirely convinced they're pinning. Okay, let's just do a refresh of our Azure browser and we'll try that again. Let's take our gateway, pin the dashboard. There we go. Now they're starting to come in. Pin to dashboard, pin to dashboard, and pin to dashboard. Perhaps I was going too fast. Okay, so let's just clean up our screen. And what we're going to do is we're just going to connect into our virtual machine to make sure we've got connectivity. So from here, let's just wait for it to load up and connect. And we're going to open up this RDP connection, which is gone on my other screen. And I'm just going to connect in as student, and I'm going to type in my password. And then from there, just bring it across. We can see that my virtual machine is now beginning to load. Okay, so we'll just wait for that to wake up. I'll leave that running in the background, but that'll spring into life in a moment. Okay, so with that done, what we're now going to do is we're going to think about connecting up Northwind to Contoso branch. Now to do this, I need to grab a little bit of information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a notepad session. And in here, what I want to do is I want to grab some information from my gateway. So I want to take these public IP addresses. So I'm going to go into North Gateway IP, and I want to take this public IP address that's listed. And we're going to paste that into Notepad. And then what I want to do is I want to do exactly the same, but this time I want to do it with Contoso branch. So let's jump into our second subscription. Under Contoso branch, I'm going to take the Contoso branch gateway IP address, and we're just going to copy this, and I'm going to go ahead and paste that into Notepad 2. So from this point, what we're going to do is we're going to create a site-to-site connection between these two companies. Okay, so let's begin by going into the Contoso branch gateway. And what we're going to do is we're going to come across to all settings and then down into connections. Now, you'll see that we still have our branch headquarters and headquarters to branch, and they're successfully connected. So we've got that virtual network connection in. But what we're going to now do is we're going to click on Add, and we're going to come across and we're going to create, let's just bring that back. We're going to create a new connection that's going to Northwind. So I'm going to say Northwind. And from there, instead of doing a VNet to VNet, this time what I want to do is I want to do a site to site. I'm going to choose an IPsec connection. We're going to be branching out from the Contoso branch gateway. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a new local network gateway. Okay, so from here, I'm going to say create new, and I'm going to call this NW Traders. And from there, it needs the public IP address, so the public IP address of your local gateway. And that's what we put into our notepad. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this public IP address and paste that in. Now, the address space for NW Traders was 192.168.200.0/24. So we'll accept that. We'll say OK. And then we're going to come down to a shared key. And I'm going to go, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D, E. Okay. This description is fine, the resource group is fine, the location is fine. So I'm going to go ahead and let's copy that. And then I'm going to go ahead and say OK and allow that to create the connection. So that's going to take a few moments, but once that's done, what we'll do is we'll jump over to Northwind and we'll recreate the connection pointing back. So there we go, we've got Northwind, which is currently updating. Okay, so with that done, let's jump into Northwind Traders. And at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the Northwind Gateway. We're going to come down to connections. And again, you'll see there's no connections in there at all. Let's click on Add. And then from there, we're going to do a connection to Contoso branch. We want to do a site to site. I'm just going to paste in that pre-shared key. And then what we need to do is we need to take this IP address range. Okay, so I'm just going to grab that public IP address. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the local network gateway. We're going to create a new one. I'm going to call this Contoso branch. I'm going to paste in that IP address. And the Contoso branch office was on the 192.168.100.0/24 address space. So let's OK that. That now comes down and we can see it looks quite happy. So let's say OK. And we'll allow that connection to build. So again, just like before, a few moments. That looks like it's now created, so we'll just wait for it to pop up into this blade. Just close that blade down, open it up again. Okay, we can see that it's in there. Okay, so if we now click on there, we can see the status is known. So we're going to pause the video, we're going to leave that for 5 minutes, and then we're going to come back and we're going to see if that connects. And we're back. We can see that Contoso branch is now succeeded. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back into Contoso branch. And if I go into the Contoso branch gateway, come across under all settings and into connections, what we will now see is we've got 3 and all of these are showing as connected. Okay, so we are good to go. Now, in order to test this, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to provision some virtual machines. So let's go ahead and think about how we're going to do that. So in this exercise, we will build the IaaS virtual machines and test connectivity between the 3 virtual networks that we created in the previous session. By now, we are familiar that we've created our point-to-site network, we've created our VNets, we've created our connections between our gateways, and we've just created a brand new company on a brand new subscription and connected up the gateways between Northwind and the Contoso branch office. So now what we want to do is we want to start populating this with some virtual machines. Now, obviously, Northwind has the virtual machine that was created via the script, but we're going to use PowerShell to create a new virtual machine in Contoso HQ, and then we'll use the graphical portal to create a new virtual machine in Contoso branch office. Finally, what we'll do is we'll open up the firewall ports and we'll test connectivity between our networks. Okay, so back into our desktop and let's connect into PowerShell. So this time we want to move over to the Contoso VM script. Let's just clean up this screen. And again, this PowerShell script will create an Azure Resource Manager virtual machine called CHQ01 in the Contoso VNet. The virtual machine will be created in a standard locally redundant storage account named Contoso HQ servers. The virtual machine will have a public facing name of Contoso-CHQ01. It will run the latest instance of Windows Server 2012 Data Center and be provisioned as an A3 standard service tier. So again, like before, we install the modules, we add the account, we then set the values. Okay, so we know what our resource group is, we know the location, we're going to create a storage account and specify the storage account tier. From there, we take those variables and we create the new storage account. We then link it to the existing virtual network and subnet. We create a network interface card. We specify the size of the machine. We then get prompted for the local administrator account and add the network interface card. Finally, we specify the disk name and create the virtual machine. Now, I have run this a few times today, so I'm not going to bother with installing all of the modules. I'm just going to go ahead and add the account and then run the script. So let's come down to here and let's go ahead and just run that selection. So again, you can see that it's beginning to go in, and what it now wants me to do is it wants me to authenticate into my Azure account. So I'm connected up to my Contoso dem at outlook.com, and I just need to authenticate in, so bear with me. So let's sign in and we'll let that PowerShell script run. So we'll leave that running, we'll come back in a few moments and we'll see if that was successful. And we're back, and we can see that the script has run. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize PowerShell, and I'm going to jump into my Contoso dashboard. And from there, let's just go into the resource group. And again, we can see we've now got a whole bunch of things in there, okay? The one that we're interested in, though, is this virtual machine. So let's go ahead and pin that to the dashboard. And let's connect into him. So let's connect. Let's open up the remote desktop and connect in. And from there, we'll say OK. I just need to bring this window across. Okay, so the screen resolution is a little smaller on my secondary monitor for the recording, so I'm going to get some scroll bars around, but we'll just wait for this to wake up. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to relax the firewall permissions just to demo connectivity amongst all of the virtual machines. I appreciate that we still need to go and create our last virtual machine, but let's just get this one ready. So if we come down, and we're going to we're just waiting for this to initialize. So let's go into PowerShell. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type in the command netsh adv firewall set all profiles stay off. Now, I don't recommend you do this in production, but this is just for test purposes. Okay, so we'll turn our firewall off, and we'll just wait for that to come back and tell us it's happy with that. We can see that's fine. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to minimize that RDP session, and we're going to go ahead and drop back down into Contoso branch. Because like I said before, what we're going to do is we're now going to build a virtual machine, but this time we're going to do it using the GUI tools. So in Contoso branch, let's click into the resource group, go up to the toolbar and click add. And then from here, what I'm going to search for is a Windows 2012 R2 data center. Why is that not coming up? So let's have a look. There we go. Let's try it one more time. So Windows 2012 R2 data center. So obviously I had a typo in there somewhere. So I'm going to select Windows Server 2012 R2 data center. And then from here, we're going to deploy using Resource Manager. Now, doing it in the GUI portal is going to want me to configure 4 stages: the basics, the size, the settings, and the summary. Under the basics, I'm going to call this Contoso BR01. The username, I'm going to put as student. I'm going to type a secure password. And then from there, my subscription's fine, my resource group is fine, and my location is fine. So I'm going to OK at this point, come down to the size. Now from here, this is where we can choose all of our different machine sizes. And again, I'm sure you're aware of the fact that we have the A revisions, and we have the Ds and the DSs and the Gs and the N series. So we'll just wait for this to come alive. I'm going to choose to view all, and what we're going to select is a A3. So let's come down to A3, 4 cores, 7 gig of RAM, up to 8 data disks, 8 times 500 IOPS, so 4,000 IOPS with load balancing and auto scaling. That one seems perfect for what we want. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to hit select. From here, I'm going to come down to settings, and it's going to start asking me how I want to provision this. So just wait for it to wake up. I'm struggling with network at the moment. Okay, so that's now appeared. So let's go through and configure our settings. So for this type, I'm going to choose standard as opposed to premium solid state disk. Standard is going to be fine. I'm going to come down to storage account. And again, at the moment, we've got the Contoso HQ servers. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new storage account for Contoso branch servers. And we need to make sure that that's okay. And we can see we get a green tick. And then what we're going to do is we're going to choose our storage tier. So let's just go in and look at the options. We've got locally redundant, geo-redundant, read access geo-redundant, and we have some premium options in there which are not available at this time. So I'm going to choose locally redundant. That's going to give me 3 local replicas within my data center region. If I go geo-redundant, it will give me 3 local copies and 3 copies in a remote region. And I can also choose read access geo-redundant, which again would give me 3 and 3, but would allow me to query the read-only copies. So you can see this is reflected in price. But what we want is we're going to choose the locally redundant. And I'm going to hit OK. And we're going to come back. So we've now selected our storage account. The virtual network is the Contoso branch VNet. The subnet is fine. We're going to create a new public IP address. So Contoso branch 01. And we're going to create a new security group. Well, actually, what I'm going to do on my security group is we can see that we're just going to accept the default RDP rule. So at the moment, it's allowing anything in on 3389. So that's going to be fine. So let's say OK. And we're going to then come down, do we want to add any extensions? So if we look at the extensions, we can go ahead and add extensions in. Now, this is going to be things like, do we want to add in anti-malware from, either Microsoft or people like Trend? Do we want to add Puppet? Do we want to add Chef? And things like that. I'm going to choose not to at this time. And I'm going to choose to turn off diagnostics. What we'll do is we'll come back at a later video and we'll really do a deep dive in virtual machines. But for now, the sole purpose of creating this machine is to test connectivity. Because of that, we're not going to bother creating an availability set either. So let's say OK. Under the summary, we can see what it's doing. So it's just running a final validation, which has passed. So let's go ahead and say OK. And we'll give it a few minutes for that virtual machine to create. Okay, so that's now created. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect into this virtual machine. And we'll just bring this across. We'll just authenticate. And again, we'll just wait for this machine to initialize. So I'll just pop that across. And we'll give it a second and we'll wait for the machine to wake up. Okay, so that looks like it's now up and running. Let's go into PowerShell. And like before, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a netshell ADV firewall, set all profiles, state off. Okay, and we'll just disable the firewall for now. Okay, and when that's done, let's just clear our screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to test and make sure that we can communicate with the servers on the remote subnets. So before we do this, let's just jump back into our PowerPoint presentation and figure out where we are. So we created our networks, we've created our separate company, we've created our virtual machines. Now, I've RDP'd into this virtual machine. We've turned off the firewalls of all of them. So what we now want to do is we want to make sure that this machine can ping Contoso headquarters. So this machine should be 192.168.10.4. And we want to make sure that this machine can ping the virtual machine in Northwind on 192.168.200.4. So let's go ahead and see if that's the case. So back into my virtual machine, let's just do an IP config. And from there, we can see that we're on the 192.168.100 network. Okay, and we want to ping 192.168.10.4 and make sure that we can communicate with the virtual machine that's situated in Contoso headquarters. And we can see that that's working perfectly. But let's now try the site-to-site connection, and we will ping the machine in the 192.168.200 network, and I think that will be on 4.2. So let's go ahead and test that. And again, we can now see that we're getting a response back from the Northwind Traders virtual machine too. In this video, we have taken an extensive look at networking within the Microsoft Cloud. We have created numerous VNets and explored different connectivity options using both PowerShell and GUI deployment methods. Finally, we have tested communication by using ICMP ping packets between virtual machines. I realize that this has been a long session, but I hope that it helps you better understand the awesome connectivity that we have in Azure. I thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you in the next session.